Hey everybody, Nightfall is one of the best Batman sagas out there, so here are all my Nightfall reviews. These are all from 2020, so we're in the midst of COVID. You're gonna see some hair changes, some weight changes, all that kind of stuff, but I hope you guys enjoy my definitive review of Batman Nightfall, the entire saga. Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent Cosina. And do you remember way back in March when I said, here's my quarantine reads, and I listed off a whole bunch of books that I haven't read, and I said I was going to read them during quarantine? Well, I'm kind of just now getting to some of them. I've read some, and you've seen those reviews on the channel as I was getting new books, but I haven't really cracked into that big pile. It's not a pile, it's on the bookshelf. But I did say at least one thing I wanted to start reading right away was the Nightfall 25th Anniversary 9-volume trade paperback collection. So I have done a third of those, and I will be doing a review on each third. So every 3 volumes, I'll be posting a video here and talking about those. And they all kind of go together, except for maybe the last one, because it's 3 different stories, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So right now, let's talk about Nightfall. So this is available also as one big hardcover omnibus, and I think it contains pretty much the exact same things that are in these volumes. So if you're following along at home, I'm talking about the 2018 printings. Yeah, I think these are 2 years old. But the 25th anniversary edition Nightfall printings. Yes, 2018. Thank you very much, math. So, volume 1, or not really volume 1, it says Prelude to Nightfall here. It's got the Joker on the front. And then you have Nightfall volume 1, and then Nightfall volume 2. So, talking about these 3 trades. And they're also available, if you have the older printing, and I think from 2015 or something like that. It wasn't that long before they reprinted these here. They were, not they all, but, these 2 volumes were printed in a big omnibus, or not omnibus, but a thicker trade paperback. So it contained Nightfall volume 1 and 2, as well as The Vengeance of Bane and the issue from the Prelude here that ends this thick book that where Bane blows up Arkham Asylum. So a little bit thicker than these 2 volumes, but you can also read that too. I think it has it does have the same, it might have the same, I think it has this cover, but a different coloring. But the reason you can tell these are different is because these all have the 25th anniversary font labels right here, and they've all got the bat symbol, the changing bat symbol, which I'm going to do a video on later as well, which I think is pretty cool. So let's talk Prelude. I read this a number of months ago. I probably read this in April or May, and then put it down, and just now got back to Nightfall over the last week or so. But Prelude is pretty cool. I'd never read a lot of this before. It starts off with the Bane, or Vengeance of Bane one-shot, which is the first appearance of Bane. It's got this beautiful, is that Glenn Fabry cover here. Written by Chuck Dixon, art by Graham Nolan, and inker Eduardo Barreto. So this is where we first meet Bane, who he is, Santa Prisca, all that stuff. But this volume does a lot better job, not really fleshing out who Bane is. I mean, that's all there in the first one-shot. Because Bane meets Batman in that one-shot and then gets mad and says, "I'm coming for you!" So it's kind of strange there. He says he's going to get him and you're going to beg for my mercy. And then they kind of go their separate ways for the rest of the volume. Most of this volume has to deal with what Batman is going through at the time. So I remember reading Nightfall for the first time when I had the older trades that I highlighted in my other video a long time ago that I've replaced these with. And I was like, why is Batman so tired? Because he starts out Nightfall Part 1 already really, really tired and exhausted. And all that exhaustion starts here. So it's all in the prelude, and I'm so happy that they start all that, because now it really does read like one complete story. You're not just joining Batman in the middle of something. You see when it started, and it started a long time ago. So he's already running himself ragged. You also get within these pages, there's an issue with Robin and Jean-Paul Valley as Azrael. You get the Metalhead issue. And Azrael's kind of pseudo costume is kind of designed on this. I'm trying to find that cover. It's a beautiful cover, but Azrael's like wearing his suit next to Robin, but that suit's never actually worn in this series. It's kind of weird. But you get all this stuff in here where Batman's going up against different guys. There's like a little kid soldier from South America who takes over an army. This is what I'm talking about. Batman 488. Yeah, it's Robin and Azrael teaming up, except Azrael never wears his costume. He wears this weird black thing that Robin gives him. So this is kind of like the first time Jean-Paul Valley shows up in the regular Batman comics. You know, Robin's learning about Azrael right here on the first page. And this is kind of where, you know, he kind of joins the Batman team, per se. So, and that's really like 6 issues before Nightfall begins. So it's really strange that this guy comes in 6 issues before the event. Here's Azrael's other costume. Looks like a ninja, basically, with the A on it. So, and then for him to take the mantle of the Bat much, much later on is just really, really weird. Another important event in this book is this battle with Killer Croc. In Nightfall Part 1, Killer Croc has already met Bane, and his arms are broken, and he's mad. All that happens in this issue right here. Now, if you're looking at this art and you're going, what is going on? This art looks terrible. Well, it's not terrible. It's Jim Aparo. And Jim Aparo is a legendary Batman artist. He just has a bunch of different inkers on him, and depending on which inker is inking Jim Aparo, you can get different levels, basically. So Jim Aparo's art is very classic, very basic. It's not David Finch or anybody. It's not Jim Lee, anybody modern. This is very much classic comic book style art, similar to the plaques on the wall. You know, clean line work, very simple, straightforward. Storytelling's very strong. Proportions are on, but it's not flashy in any way. It's very workmanlike. You also have pencilers in here like Graham Nolan, who is very good. I really like his style. I think the best. Tom Mandrake's in here, Michael Netzer, and Tom Grindenberg. So they're kind of all over the place. And this collects Batman, Vengeance of Bane, and issues of Detective Comics. It's all in the back there. But this volume is most important, I think, for the introduction of Jean-Paul Valley and Azrael. Although it doesn't have the sort of Azrael miniseries. So you're just kind of like, here's a character. You can go buy that trade or, you know, read that story elsewhere. But the most important thing is the last issue right here where Arkham Asylum gets blown up. Why that's not Nightfall Part 1, I have no idea. But it is important because that's where Arkham Asylum's blown up, and then you have the events of Volume 1. So reading Volume 1, it made a lot more sense now after reading the prelude why Batman was so tired and everything like that. What's not explained in this volume or this one is who Chandra Kinsolving is and why she is treating Tim Drake's dad for something, or what is wrong with Tim Drake's dad. All that, I guess, is left to Wikipedia. I need to go read that. But it's not that important right now. I'm sure when I get to Knightquest The Search, it will be more important because that's the story of Bruce trying to go find him. But what's strange about this volume is that Bane is barely in it. Like, he's the bad guy. He's on the cover. He's the guy that takes Batman down and breaks his back like he does on this cover. But he only really appears in like the last, 2 issues or something like that. And even Bane's henchmen, while Bane and his henchmen are throughout all these issues for little snippets, you never forget that they're there. Batman doesn't face off with them until the last 2 issues of this volume. And this volume is the first 11 parts, yes, of Knightfall. So you're talking about 9 other issues where Batman is facing off against other enemies. These other enemies include the Riddler, Mr. Zsasz, the Joker, Scarecrow. The Scarecrow tale in here was pretty good. Killer Croc again. This issue right here. Which issue is this? Batman 660, covered by Sam Keith here. This is Jim Balent on art, and he goes on to do the Catwoman miniseries. But this was my favorite, one of my favorite issues in this whole book, and his art stands out against the others, basically because he's the only guy other than Jim Aparo and Graham Nolan doing the art in this book, because it's just Batman issues and detective issues. But his art stood out to me. I can see why they gave him a Catwoman book right after Knightfall. Maybe this was his tryout or something like that. But it's really, really good. Batman, Robin, Bane, Robin, and Killer Croc are fighting in the sewers on like this beam up here. It's a really cool issue. That's a standout to me. So finally, Bane comes after Batman after he's basically almost nearly drowned in a tunnel thanks to Robin. Thanks to Scarecrow and Joker. And he sends his goons after him, Trog, Zombie, and who's the bird guy? Can't remember the bird guy. These 3 gentlemen right here. And these guys are here in the issues, but they're never really like laid out why they're so dangerous. And certainly they do push Batman around, but he does get like, I guess, the upper hand enough. He still outsmarts him. So all in all, these guys are not that dangerous to Batman. So I don't know why Bane is keeping them around other than they're doing his dirty work. But at the end of everything, that's when Bane comes in. I love this page from Graham Nolan. It is you, with my terrible South American accent, leading into Batman 497, where his back is broken. Part 11 of Knightfall. But I love this page right here. But yeah, so it's kind of weird that like this master plan, this guy who thinks he can take on Batman, and he's always talking about how superior he is to Batman and how he's going to beat Batman, etc., doesn't actually do it himself. He lets other people wear him down to like the lowest possible level, and then he goes to fight Batman. Maybe because Batman kind of shamed him a little bit in the beginning in the prelude in Vengeance of Bane. But it's very strange. It's like, what if you think you're so strong and so smart? Like, why wouldn't you face him at his best? Why face him at his worst? So that was kind of weird. So I can see why it's a great story. I really enjoy it. But as far as Bane as a villain, they build him up here to be a threat, but they never follow through because he just you're kicking somebody when they're down is basically all he's doing. So that is a little strange right there to me. So Knightfall Volume 2 is where but Jean Paul Valley takes up the mantle of Batman, faces off against Bane a second time, and kicks his ass, basically. So maybe they did that to make Bane break Batman's back, have his plan, but meanwhile, the brand new guy, once he gets his armor on, goes and kicks Bane's ass, kind of tears down this idea that Bane is like this ultimate Batman villain, the strongest one there is, and all this other stuff that he's spouting out the entire time. So Knightfall goes all the way to Batman 500, and that is part 19 right here. So what's cool about Knightfall, and these collections in particular, is that they're highlighting how the bat symbol in the corner changes. So every issue of Knightfall, they said the name of the book and then Knightfall banner at the top all open up to a cover right here. This is not a good one. They kind of make the bat symbol get eclipsed and change different colors. So here's one right here if you can see it. There you go, number 16. So I'll do a video where I show all the different ones getting eclipsed, and then that carries on and through the rest of the series with Knightquest and Knight's End and all that stuff, how that ends. But it's cool to open each cover and see like you're getting closer and closer to an all-red bat symbol. And then when you get to Batman 500, you're at the new bat symbol, all red. right there. Very simplistic, stylized, very 90s bat symbol. So this is also kind of a weird book. I've read all this stuff before, but what was strange to me is how much time they spend with Bruce Wayne just kind of like laying in waste, you know? You start out and they get Bruce Wayne back to the Batcave and checking on him and make sure everything's okay for one issue. And then they say, well, now we need to wait, or we need some drugs and stuff. And then we cut to this 2-part Showcase 93 story that's basically a retelling of an adventure that happened earlier in Nightfall that didn't fit within the regular issues, or maybe they were late, I have no idea. But they put these as parts 13 and 14 of Nightfall, when you read them, and honestly, I skipped over a lot of it because it was like, this stuff's already happened, it doesn't matter. There's 1 or 2 pages in each of these Showcase 93 issues where they're just framing devices, and they're still waiting by Bruce Wayne's unconscious body because he's in a coma and stuff like that. And then they get some drugs, Bruce Wayne wakes up, and then you have this weird 3-part storyline from these issues of Shadow of the Bat, 16, 17, and 18. And they have the Nightfall banner, but they don't have parts. And when you read it in this volume, it's really jarring because you're getting to... suddenly you get to the next part 16. Like, look how thick this is. All this is just... It's got the Nightfall banner, but it's not a part. So, in the issue right before this, Jean-Paul Valley gets the bat, the bat cape, says, okay, you're going to fill in as Batman for now. Then he goes on a 3-issue adventure all on his own, which doesn't really fit in anywhere because he's already says he's Batman, and he already knows that he's like Batman. He's doing his own thing. He's more violent, more vicious. But I guess they stuck it in here because he doesn't have the new gloves, where you get to part 16, which is Detective 665. And I think it's towards the end of this issue. No. It's part 17 where he gets the new bat gauntlets. They're right there in the corner, in the spine there. So maybe they could have put him in here, but this has like a very clear delineation. He jumps with this mob boss off the roof here, and then you turn the next page, the next issue, and he's beating up that same mob boss right there. So I guess they didn't fit there, but it's a little strange because 665 starts with Dick, Tim, Robin. God, I can't keep these guys straight. There's so many Robins going, he's a lot different as Batman, whereas like literally the issue before in the regular Batman books, he just got this ability to wear the cape and cowl, I guess. So anyway, it's made pretty clear once you get past the Scarecrow stuff, which is a good story. I recommend it. It's just weird where it fits in, and that they slot in 3 issues of the same book that has the Nightfall banner but is not one of the parts in the main storyline. It's kind of a side story. So you could totally skip it, but rereading of those 3 issues, I think they're pretty cool. So maybe read them if you want. It's up to you. Or come back to them at the end. But it's made pretty clear that, Jean-Paul Valley as Batman is a more vicious thing, and Bruce immediately, like earlier in the volume, says, don't go after Bane, he's mine, or he's too powerful, he's too strong, he'll get you. And then Jean-Paul Valley's like, no, I'm Batman, I'm going to go after the bad guy. And things kind of fall apart from there. So the story ends, obviously, with Jean-Paul Valley getting a new gloves, and then finally, in Batman 500, getting a new bat suit. This page right here. So this is Mike Manley on art, and he takes over in the last half of Batman 500. What's cool, this is a really thick issue, Batman 500, is, here's the Kelly Jones cover with As-Bats in that costume beating up Bane, similar to this one. What's cool is you have Jim Aparo doing like the first half of the issue, with Batman in his old suit. And then once Batman gets his new suit, they switch to Mike Manley as an artist, and then he takes over, and you get this beautiful like framing sequence of Jean-Paul Valley flying through Gotham, gliding on his new cape that he designed himself, hunting Bane. And then he finds Bane and beats the crap out of him, and then kind of hesitates when he's about to kill him, and then leaves. And then Robin's saying, okay, you've earned the right to be Batman. He goes, thanks, kid, and leaves. In the back, we've got some sketches and stuff like that. So what I realized in rereading all this is that Nightfall is not necessarily the fall of Bruce Wayne. It's really about the fall of the mantle of the Bat. And I think that's why the Eclipse takes 17 issues of the Bat signal to get fully eclipsed in that kind of red tinge. Or is it 18? Yeah, 18 issues to get this red, fully eclipsed red bat symbol, to where we've gone from the yellow bat symbol to this red one, to now Batman as a person, you know, is a bloody, not a bloody character, but just a darker Batman. So the Nightfall in the title is not necessarily about Bruce Wayne getting his back broken, although that is the main thing that happens throughout this 3 volumes. It's mostly Bruce up until the middle of this one, but it's really about how the idea of Batman is broken, and then it's, you know, kind of rebuilt and restarted towards the end here, with this new, more violent Batman. And then we will see that kind of descent into darkness, into madness in the Knightquest volumes. So all in all, I still think this is a good read. It is very old. It's, you know, 25, 27 years old right now. So call it 30. And because it came out in 93, 94, you know, the coloring is still very basic. It's still like the 80s coloring or the early 90s coloring. For whatever reason, Image had broken away in the early 90s, I think around the same time, and they went with computer coloring. And you have beautiful painted covers in here from Brian Stelfreeze and stuff like that, where it looks more modern. And Brian Stelfreeze's art is very stylized. But the interiors with Graham Nolan is a little bit more of a modern style, but definitely the legacy art of Jim Aparo lends this to like a more classic feel of the Batman story, even though it's only 25 years old. But it makes it feel a little bit older than that. But I assure you, the writing and all that stuff is still modern. You can still read it if you're a modern Batman fan and have never read this before. I think it's important to read because it sets up who Bane is and why Bane is this, you know, kind of terrified villain. He's not necessarily overused like the Joker is or Two-Face is, but he was a new villain at the time, and he was like one of the ones from that era that stuck. You know, Nightfall Volume 1 has some stories with Amygdala and who's the other guy? Scarface and the Ventriloquist, and they're not really threatening. You know, it is kind of cool to read Nightfall Volume 1 and 2 and see Scarface slowly come back to prominence with the Ventriloquist and all the different hand puppets he has. But it doesn't set up a real threat the way that Bane is for Batman. So I definitely recommend these trades, recommend this story. I really like the spine, how it sets up on your bookshelf as the, you know, eclipsing bat symbol. Really, really cool. As well as when you get all 9 volumes, you got 3 of these basically up there. So, Nightfall. I think it's a good story. I think it holds up. I was a little worried that it wasn't going to hold up when I reread it, but I'm glad I reread it. Had a lot of fun. And the prelude helps a lot. The prelude helps a lot. So definitely, I think you can definitely read 1 and 2, no problem, but I think you're going to get the most out of it if you read the prelude, because that's really where you see the start of the descent of Bruce Wayne to get so tired, so exhausted, that you understand by the end of Nightfall Volume 1 in that tunnel, facing the Joker and Scarecrow, trying to save the mayor. He is literally on his last leg of strength. And then it's just all the more tragic to see him get the shit beat out of him by Bane in the very next issue. So I think that, you know, that build right there is very important to the story. Whereas if you just read Volume 1 and 2, you might miss some of it. Although, you know, don't be surprised when you read Prelude that there's not a whole lot of Bane once you get past that first issue with the Vengeance of Bane. So I told you. But, I mean, again, it's a thick story, and I already told you, too, also that, like, you know, you don't see Bane in every issue. So take that with what you will, I guess. So thumbs up for me. I like this story. I'm glad I reread it. Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I am your host, Brent Cosina. We're going to be doing a review today of Batman Knightquest The Crusade Volume 1. This is the spine. These are the new, I think they're 2019 printings of these series. Had a lot of comments recently on my video for the trade rundown from like a year ago when I got all these. So I'm finally reading them. And I did a review of Nightfall as a whole, and I did all three trades, which was Prelude, Volume 1, and Volume 2. And I decided to break this one up because there are three trades to this. It's the Crusade Volume 1, Crusade Volume 2, and then Knightquest The Search. So I decided to do separate reviews for each book because they are thick books. This one is, I don't know, 353 pages. That's right, or 354 plus some extras. So it's a very, very thick book, and it took me a while to read it, just in between everything I have going on in my life, and I think it will take you a while too. Also, I want to, talk about each book as it stands on its own, because they are going to be like, you're going to read one and then another and another. And since the Knightquest storyline isn't really one cohesive storyline the way that Nightfall is, one part does not really lead into another. These are the adventures of Jean Paul Valley as Batman in the parts that are labeled The Crusade. This is Jean Paul Valley, or As-Bats, as he is sometimes called, his crusade against evil and crime in Gotham City. So I wanted to break it up and just go through it here. So this volume is Volume 1. It contains issues of Detective Comics, Robin, issues 1 and 2, Batman Shadow of the Bat, Batman, and 2 issues of Catwoman. So the first thing when you read this book is it starts out with, him taking over as Batman, and then it kind of immediately goes into, or not immediately, but a little bit later, goes into 2 issues of Robin, which kind of are very, very ancillary. And I think it's because the first issue of, what issue was it? I think it was Batman. Who's drawing? It's Graham Nolan. So I think it's Detective Comics. Yes, it's this one. Detective Comics 668. This is the cover here. It ends with Robin kind of being thrust out of the Batcave, and then immediately goes to Robin number 1. Which picks up right after that moment with Robin being kicked out of the Batcave. And I guess since they decided to include the entire story here in terms of like what Robin goes through, I mean, really him and Batman in issue 1 is 4 pages. Like, I think Jean Paul Valley never shows up again in these 2 issues. Robin then goes on his solo adventure, and because this issue ends on a cliffhanger, they include the next issue, which is Robin number 2. Now, that's not to say these aren't good stories. They just don't really mean anything to the Knightquest Crusade of Jean Paul Valley, other than that first scene to show Jean Paul kicking Robin out of the Batcave and saying, "I don't need a sidekick," for reasons we don't really understand. I will say the best story in here, the one that I really enjoyed the most, which was surprising because I've read a couple of these issues. At one point in my life, I was going to collect all these single issues and track them down at cons and then bind them together, because at the time, there was no collection for the Knightquest, adventures of Jean Paul Valley as Batman. So I wanted to do that myself. I never got around to doing it, but I did read some of the issues as I was collecting them. So I've read a lot of Graham Nolan's artwork with Chuck Dixon writing on Detective Comics. Read a lot of Mike Manley doing the artwork with Doug Munch on Batman, and I really like those artists and really like those stories. The Shadow of the Bat issues were the ones that were really kind of like, is this really a main Batman title? Do we really need to have these in here? And I gotta say, after reading this storyline that's in here, it's called The Tallyman. These issues are written by Alan Grant, and the artist is Vince Giordano. He's a very different artist from Mike Manley and Graham Nolan. He's very kind of new age, imagey, lots of hatching, lots of big muscles, big pages, double page spreads. But I gotta say, after reading these, I think there were 3 issues, This was the best storyline in the book because Alan Grant was like kind of the first writer to really delve into the psyche of Jean-Paul Valley and the system and how it is affecting him and why there are certain things the way they are, why he can't really control it, why he's, unaware of the system in his brain instead of being aware and able to control it. There are moments in here where the system takes over and Batman does things and he's going, why is my hand moving? Why is this doing that? It's reflexes for him because it's all been baked into his mind. There's also artwork in this Tallyman issue where you see Jean-Paul Valley's dad, they don't say his name, but his father implanting the system in him when he's a small child, like asleep. There's like this giant, almost like an old medical light or something, like beaming stuff into his brain while he's asleep. And like that's kind of how they're putting the system in these children. All of that's not really explored in the Batman books in here and the detective books in here. So that was by far the most interesting storyline. And then to have him go up against this character of the Tallyman, who is this kind of weird, bump my camera there, whoops, this weird, like, skinny little guy with guns. He's mainly an assassin in a top hat and mask, who also, the Tallyman also, we find out in this story, also has, like, a weird childhood history where he was abused and stuff and is kind of killing people out of a want for vengeance based on what he went through as a child. Like, all these little storylines that Alan Grant links them together inside of a kind of a plain Batman story where he's trying to stop an assassin. And it really stood out to me as the best storyline in the book. It follows up there with some kind of random storyline with Doug Munch and Mike Manley going against this kind of armored assassin. And it was like, they're taking down mobsters. That was okay. The most fun villains of this book were the Trigger Twins. These guys right here. This is a Chuck Dixon creation. I think they start out very early on in the book, and then you catch up to them later on in this volume. They're just fun because the conceit here is that they're both crime guys who like to dress up as cowboys and carry revolvers and didn't know they had an identical twin until they both start the same job or come up to rob the same bank or something the same way. And they go, "Who are you? Who are you? You look like me. Your shoe look like me too. We must be twins." And it just kind of like goes from there. It's wild. It's wacky. It's comic books, baby. You gotta love it. It's the 90s, right? They were the most fun. I really liked them. And then after that, the book ends with this like 4-part crossover with Catwoman, where it's Catwoman issues 6 and 7, and then 2 issues of Batman in between that. Which is kind of a weird thing to order it, because you would think that if these books were coming out monthly, back in the day, you would have an issue of Catwoman, an issue of Batman, an issue of Catwoman, an issue of Batman. This one, nope. It's 2 Catwoman bookends with 2 issues of Batman in the middle. Which is not a big deal, I just thought it was kind of weird that it wasn't alternating, because that's how I would think it would be based on, reading comic books for many, many years. But, that's just Catwoman trying to stop some eco-terrorists. Batman gets in the way, gets mixed up, and there's a little interesting thing here with, like, Catwoman wondering why Batman doesn't recognize her or treats her the way he does, because it's like he's never met her before, when that's true. Jean-Paul Valley's never met Catwoman before. And then when you switch to the Batman issues, you have Batman kind of lusting after Catwoman and having weird... There's a part in here where he says he has weird dreams about Catwoman, and it shames him that he had these dreams about Catwoman. He makes comments about her silky and slinky outfit and stuff like that. It's like, man, you are really, really sexually repressed, Jean-Paul. And it's also the 90s, and, if you saw Jim Balent draw Catwoman the way he does in this book, you might think the same things too. So that is the end of the book, which is Catwoman number 7. So I think altogether there's probably like 15 or 16 issues in here. It's a pretty decent read. I think you'll have fun with it. I think it being broken up into little bits really helps carry the stories along. And I think something also that they did very well was the mapping. So they don't map it in publication order. I think if that was the case, you would be all over the place and you wouldn't really enjoy it. Instead, since every story is like consistently 2 to 3 issues long, they say, okay, we're going to do these 2 issues here, followed by the following story from the other book, followed by the Tallyman story from the other book, you know, slot the Robin story right in the middle with 2 issues back to back. So you get a full storyline with one writer, one artist all the way through, and then switch to a new storyline, new writer, new artist all the way through. I think that helps the flow of the book very, very much. So that is my review of Knightquest The Crusade Volume 1. So these are the 25th anniversary editions of the book. And you can tell this is a different printing because of the spine, but if you're looking online trying to buy them, there is another book that's called Knightquest. It's a thicker book, like it's twice this thickness, right? It's got the same cover here, the same Kelly Jones cover. The difference is you got the new DC logo here as opposed to the old one, and the banner is the most important part. If it just says Knightquest on the top, Batman Knightquest as part of Nightfall, that is the older printing of this book with not as nice paper. This is a nice matte paper that's very thick. You're not going to tear it apart while ripping it. The other one more feels like an old phone book kind of thing. So this is the 25th anniversary edition. Even though it doesn't say 25th anniversary anywhere on here, like I think that's what they are online on Amazon, and it's got a specific ISBN number here, and it's got this banner, which is the most important part, and if you can see the spine, this is the spine. So if you're looking for this book, that's what to look for. So let me know what you guys thought. I thought it was a pretty good read, but then again, I love Jean Paul Valley, I love Asbats, and I had a whole lot of fun reading this. If you think it's corny and cheesy, you might not have as much fun, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Some cool little Batman stories in here. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you thought of Knightquest The Crusade. Do you like Asbats? Do you want more Asbats content? You're going to get it because we're going to read all 9 volumes of this and start breaking them up into separate videos. So hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent Casina, here today to talk with you about my favorite iteration of Batman, because this is how I got into comics. Knightquest Batman, right over here. This is the statue head. There's a link to a video somewhere here in the cards. Love this little guy. But we're going to be doing a review of The Crusade, Volume 2, Batman Knightquest. So this is part of the newer edition, newer collection of trades. You can also find this story in the Batman Knightquest Omnibus if you're reading them that way. But this is, you know, the third of, you know, one of the spines, you know, stuff like that. So we did a review of Volume 1, and we're going to read The Search next, and that would complete the trifecta of the spines if you put them all like this here. So these were collected in, I think I want to say it was 2018. I just got my set last year, but I love this set. So The Search has never been collected, so I've never read it, so I'm interested to read that. But I have read, what I surprisingly had read a number of books here in this Knightquest volume. And I say a number of them because when I got into comics, I remember going into a Toys R Us at one point in time and picking up like a 10-pack of DC Comics. Okay, so in there were a number of issues, and when I was cleaning out my kids' playroom closet the other week, I found my old binder of the original comics I had, which I reread and reread to death. So here they are. This is Batman 505. This is when Abattoir first meets Batman. The cover has fallen off. The pages are yellow, but it's, you know, reading the trade paperback was exactly as I remember reading and rereading and rereading and rereading and rereading this issue over and over again, that the covers have fallen off. Also in here, we had Shadow of the Bat 25. This is when he gets the upgraded helmet that you see on the bust here to my left. And then he adds the actual bat symbol to the costume. Before then, it was just solid blue, and then as of that issue, he added it. Then I had the first meeting of him and Gunhawk. This is Detective Comics 674. Also in here was the Batman 508, where Abattoir is killed, and that's a pivotal issue in terms of this storyline. And I also had Detective Comics 675. This is the final battle with Gunhawk, and the first appearance of this bladed suit, stuff like that, which you would see on this Mattel figure. This is the Knightquest, I think it's called the Knightquest Batman, but, you know, this is what they did for Azrael from Mattel when they were producing the DC Multiverse line. Love, 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 love this figure. The only thing wrong about it is these are backwards, but whatever. One thing that was funny also in there was the conclusion of the story, which was, I thought was neat. This is the end, Knightquest Part 10. This is where Bruce reclaims the mantle, and somehow his costume gets red. How does that happen? We'll find out in a future video. But what was interesting, because I've been looking at this image for many, many years, saying this is one of my favorite covers of all time, and just because it was so cool, and I didn't realize, guys, that Kelly Jones did the cover. That's his signature right there. I didn't realize this was a Kelly Jones cover. Hell, I didn't realize that Kelly Jones did all the covers for all of the books in here except for the Shadow of the Bat issues. Kelly Jones does all the covers except for the Shadow of the Bat ones, which, if you saw the Batman Shadow 25, this is a beautiful Brian Stelfreeze painted cover. He did all the Shadow of the Bat. So, I did not know that. I thought I wasn't a Kelly Jones fan. It turns out I'm still not really a Kelly Jones fan in certain areas, but I am a Kelly Jones fan when he draws my Batman right here. So what is in the Crusade Volume 2? And what is the Crusade? So what's in here? Let's go through it. This is Detective Comics 671, 72, 73, 74, 75. Batman Shadow of the Bat 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Batman 505, 506, 507, 508, and Showcase 94, number 7. So that is what's in here. This is a thick boy compared to that Search trade paperback. All in all, this is probably, I don't know, 18 issues or so, something like that. It's pretty thick. You know, it's more than 12 for sure. So, just like Volume 1 of the Crusade, which I really, really liked, really appreciated, was the thing that they did in terms of like mapping where the issues go, because I somehow figured out what the reading order for the single issues were when I was a kid. I just, you know, read, oh, well, this costume's here, you know, the last in 675, this cover here, he's all beat up and shot up. So when did that happen? Well, that happened when he first met Gunhawk, etc., etc. But the way they map them in here in Crusade Volume 1, and they continue that here in Crusade Volume 2, is they put all the storylines together. So this issue kicks off with Azrael Batman, Azbats, Jean Paul Valley, whatever you want to call him, going up against the Joker, which you would think, you know, after reading Nightfall Part 1, where the Joker totally decimates Batman with the flooding of a tunnel and everything, the Joker would be a fearsome foe for Azbats to take on. Actually, Joker's a little goofier in this one. It's Chuck Dixon writing, so this is part of the Detective Comics title. And Joker's actually like setting up a movie, and he's trying to kill Batman and film it at the same time so that he can then sell it to a movie studio. It's a little wacky, but it's a whole lot of fun. You've got Graham Nolan on art and Scott Hanna on inks, which really makes this art sing. And I'm noticing after reading these issues and knowing that my favorite inker for John Romita Jr. is Scott Hanna, based on his JMS Spider-Man stuff, Scott Hanna is definitely a very, very good inker. But yeah, this is like a little 3 or 4 parter, and then once that's done, it switches over to the Shadow of the Bat. I think 1 or 2 issues. Then it goes to like an issue of Batman, then back to Shadow of the Bat, and then a bunch of issues more of Batman at Detective Comics, then back to Shadow of the Bat with this weird Clayface 3-parter or 2-parter. It was 2 parts. That was definitely weird because I did not know. I'd seen this cover before with this snake creature. I didn't know that was Lady Clayface. I didn't know there was a Lady Clayface. Hell, I didn't know that there was a Clayface 3. And they call him Clayface 3 in the issues. They don't call him by his name or just Clayface or his code name, whatever. They just go, Clayface 3 is on the loose. And this is the Clayface that looks kind of like Mr. Freeze here. So apparently he's called Clayface not because he turns into clay and can shapeshift. Lady Clayface can. She can do that stuff. Clayface 3 has an acid touch, and when he touches you, you burn. And like you melt? Yeah, you kind of melt away. Until you're like a glob of goop. Now, what's weird is we had the Corrosive Man show up in Shadow of the Bat 25, and he's the guy that actually, he trashes the original Asbat's costume here. You can see all the holes and stuff in it. And at the end of that issue, we had what was this double-page spread, but it's a single page here. Let's open up the real issue. It was really cool. Had to turn it sideways. Look at that. That was one downside about these trades. Like they it's nice to just rotate it so you don't have to hold the trade up like this and try and read it. But look how much this art sings from, I think this is Brett Blevins. Yeah. How much this sings compared to this, kind of downsized version. So even in the Omnibus, I don't know if they do this double-page spread for the vertical ones, which is really kind of a 90s thing. They were doing this a whole lot in the 90s. Instead of just reading it across, they would make you turn the book that way. But I love this page. I love this. Love it, love. But yeah, so it's just here. The only way I knew it was because I remembered it, and the text boxes are a little bit smaller. They didn't like upsize them or anything in the collection to make them easier to read, because you can read that just fine, and then you look at that and you're like, why is it so small? But anyway, yeah, Clayface 3, had no idea he was in here, had no idea what he was or anything. It was just weird that this guy kind of has the same powers as the Corrosive Man, who just was like, had acid on his skin, and is almost like if you tossed acid at you, that would, corrode you. Whereas like if this Clayface, if he touches you, you're like instant glue on the floor kind of thing. It's really weird. But it was also fun to read all these stories and see how the character of Abattoir, that's this guy in this green cloak here, he's this crazy serial killer. Once he shows up here about halfway through this volume, not halfway, more than halfway. Once he shows up in Batman 505 in this issue, so you're about a quarter in. Once he shows up in 505, they take this character of Abattoir, whom I only read in 2 issues, in those old issues from my childhood. They thread the needle of this storyline, and Batman hunting him after he escapes Batman, in almost every issue of the series after that. There's little hints, there's little references. This alien guy, what's this guy's name? It's Ballistic. He shows up here in the next issue of Batman, and he's trying to hunt down, there's a contract out on Abattoir, and him and Batman kind of team up. The weird part is this Ballistic guy is like, I don't know if he's an alien or something, but he's got these weird horns on his chin. It's really strange. This is the guy right here. So I don't know if this came out of like the weird Bloodlines crossover in the 90s. It's unclear. But he shows up for 2 issues and then disappears, so it doesn't really matter. But love. And surprisingly, like, who drew this? Is this Brett Blevins again? Yeah, so when Brett Blevins comes back, when you're going back to this Shadow of the Bat page, like, for some reason, the issue number 25 was really, really dirty because it was in the rain. It had the Corrosive Man, like, it was a little scratchy. But reading this 2-issue arc with the Clayface characters, like, look at this spread. It's so clean. It's so beautiful. This is now one of my new favorite renditions of Knightquest Batman. It's beautiful. I don't know what happened, if you got a different inker or what, so I'll have to investigate more. But it's just so clean, I guess because it's so technical. Really, really sings. Whereas, like, you look at his faces and stuff, they're kind of all over the place. Not bad, but just stylistically, it seems very different. But anyway, I loved this book, and I don't know if that's because it's a good read or if because it's just my childhood all in one volume. Like, this is everything I read and reread for many, many years up until I think Batman Hush came out. I reread those issues many times. And I knew that there were 2 Batman for years just because of those issues. And it's funny that most of them are collected in here, except for the Robin issue and the conclusion of Night's End. I just think that's hilarious. But I really had a lot of fun with this book. So if you're just looking for some more Azbat stories, definitely check this out. There's the little thread of Abattoir coming in here, and they're kind of threading the needle about how Jean-Paul Valley stuff goes crazy, but they're not going into a whole bunch. Like, I was surprised how little there was of the figures of Saint Dumas and his father. Because I remember when I was reading Batman 505, like the second page, Saint Dumas appears to him, and his father does, and they're arguing over, this is falling apart, they're arguing over, who's right, whether he should be an avenging angel or a crusading knight, and it's kind of helping Jean-Paul Valley go a little bit more insane each time he has these visions. They don't really have a whole lot of that in this volume or volume 1. So I don't know if that's going to be explored more if we do see Knightquest Batman in the Search volume or what. So that was something that I was left wanting more of, to see how it truly drove him crazy. But what's interesting here about the final Abattoir issue here in... oh gosh, I'm trying to find the real one now. That's going to hurt me. It's buried. Here we go. 508. What's really interesting, rereading it after I've seen Batman Begins more recently, is how you have this page where Robin's looking at what happened, and he says, "You let him die." And it's like, isn't that what Batman did in Batman Begins with Ra's al Ghul on the train? I think so. But it's interesting that this is the thing where they start going after him, and immediately after this issue, in the collection here, you have Commissioner Gordon confronting Batman about letting this guy die, and how Graham Etchison dies because they never found out that Abattoir had kidnapped this guy and was torturing him. He died because nobody bothered to check, so that makes him a murderer. So really there's 2 murders at the hands of Azbats here in this volume. And then it's just the final issue in here is that Detective 675 with this cover, where it's just Jean-Paul Valley's just kind of, he hasn't really lost it. He's kind of the same, but he just doesn't care anymore. And it shows how violent he becomes with this new armor. But it's also interesting that this armor's not around that often, not around very much. And that's the thing that he has for 10 issues in Night's End. And, my favorite action figure that I've ever gotten is this guy, that kind of thing. So he was in the original Knightquest armor, this one here, a lot longer than I actually thought after reading these 2 volumes. So that was another interesting fact. Still love this one, but, for me, it's got to be the craziness. Got to be the 90s craziness. So I think it's fun. If you enjoy the concept of Azbats and this imposter Batman, and you know that there are going to be some things you don't like, he's still brutal, but, what Batman story have you read where he's not that brutal? Or where he's like, oh, can I not punch you so fast? There's a whole lot less talking. There's a whole lot less dialogue in the Knightquest volumes because it's all internal monologue. Jean-Paul Valley doesn't want Robin running around with him. He's kind of distancing himself. So it's a whole lot of caption boxes and then dialogue between the other characters, whether it's the cops or the villains, that type of thing. Another thing I did not know, which I now know because I've read it all through these guys, is kind of the arc of Commissioner Gordon. We actually explore that between Volume 1 and Volume 2, and it comes to a head in the penultimate issue in this collection, which is a Shadow of the Bat issue. I think it's this, 28. And it's Gordon calling Batman with the bat signal and saying, "Who are you? You're not the Batman I grew up with. I recognize that I know. And don't you dare do this again. You killed this guy. You're a murderer." And they're he almost, he throws a punch at Commissioner Gordon throws a punch at Batman. Batman dodges, and Commissioner Gordon goes off the side of the building. And Batman grabs him and makes a point to say, "If I didn't care so much about human life, I would let you die right now." Pulls him back and then leaves. And it's that is a crazy thing for Batman to say. And Batman purists will definitely hate it. But if you're just reading it for the 90s fun, it's a great moment. So I recommend it, but again, take it with a grain of salt. This was my childhood. I loved rereading this, and rereading the issues I read before many times. And I loved reading for the first time the Joker story, the Clayface story, that Commissioner Gordon moment, all that stuff that was in here that I did not know about at all. So check it out. I recommend it. This retails for $20 back here. And again, this has got the nice spine. And it doesn't say 25th anniversary anywhere, but you can find it pretty easy. It's got, these new ones have this big banner. So anyway. Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent Cassina. We're going to be talking about Batman, Knightquest, The Search. This is the third trade paperback in the new printings, I guess, if you would, of the entire Knightfall Saga. There's 9 volumes in all. And with The Search, we are now basically 2/3 through this 9-volume set, which started coming out in 2018. But before I get started talking about what this is in this book, is it any good, all this stuff, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, because all that stuff helps the channel grow and allows us to do more funner things if we get growing up here. So thank you guys for watching, and let's get started. So Batman, Knightquest, The Search, what is this? Well, obviously, this cover would lead you to believe that this somehow contains a confrontation between Azrael, Jean-Paul Valley Batman, and Bruce Wayne with Robin caught in the middle. That's not the case. This is the best issue in this little trade paperback. It's got 8 issues in here, but it's the last issue, and that issue is Robin number 7. It's the cover from Robin number 7 right here on the front, and that is kind of where Bruce Wayne comes back and says, hey, Jean-Paul, you're no longer Batman. I'm going to retake the mantle. And Jean-Paul's like, go away. You're a broken old man. I'm Batman. Stuff like that. And that one is called, it's got a little banner on it. It's the only one that has it. It's called Knightquest, The Conclusion on it. Every other issue in here is called Knightquest, The Search, on top of their banner. So that's how you differentiate it. So what is The Search? Well, I thought The Search was the tale of how Bruce got his back healed, because for years and years and years, this storyline has never been collected up until this volume actually came out right here. They'd done Night's End trades and Nightfall, part 1 and 2 trades that I replaced when I got these. They'd done the big softback omnibuses, which are 3-volume sets. There's a Knightquest volume in there. It's like volume 2 of that big softcover omnibus. But it only has these issues right here, which is Knightquest volume 1, volume 2. They probably have Robin number 7 in the back of that one, I would lead to believe. But even that big volume doesn't have all the issues that are in here as well. So you're missing some stuff, which is why I would recommend upgrading if you want, I guess, the true story. But really, you don't maybe really need to upgrade if you just want to read The Search. You could just buy this separately and slide it in next to your other stuff. Do you need to, though? Absolutely not. I was, this is one of the ones I was most excited to read, because I had heard that Chandra Kinsolving, who was this doctor in Nightfall, healed Bruce's back, and that's how it came to be. So I was thinking that The Search, even though we know, at the end of Nightfall, or somewhere in the beginning of Volume 1, Jack Drake, which is Tim's father, gets kidnapped, as well as Chandra Kinsolving, which is this black woman doctor, who was treating Jack and apparently in love with Bruce at the same time. Now, for an early 90s book, that's pretty progressive in terms of Batman, dating a black woman when his entire supporting cast is a bunch of white people. I'm in favor of it, that's fine, but it's just really random how in this book you find out that Bruce was going to propose to Chandra. And he lets that slip in this volume, and you're going, that was not set up at all. And Nightfall is a whole mess of issues of Batman and Detective Comics. Was there any romance between Bruce and Chandra in that? Not at all. So maybe Chandra was a longer-term character than I had thought. But this volume is mainly the storyline about Bruce searching for Chandra and Jack Drake and trying to find them and bring them back home because they've been kidnapped. So it's got a couple of tales in here, and they're all interconnected. A lot of this, most of it, takes place in Shadow of the Bat and Legends of the Dark Knight. Pop around between those different books, but it starts off with 2 issues of this really weird title I had never really heard of called Justice League Task Force. But what's weird is I don't know who's on the task force because Bronze Tiger, Gypsy, and Green Arrow act like they don't even know each other. They're like, who are you? Who are you? Why are you here? And they're all been hired by Bruce Wayne. So which ones were on the task force, I have no idea. And they keep talking about John. So I'm assuming they're talking about Martian Manhunter, John Jones. They say John Jones a lot. So maybe that's it. This book was not very good at all, honestly. And it was very, very disappointing because I was picturing somewhat of a rescue mission and then somewhat of like a healing mission or a healing journey for Bruce to say, we've worked on your back, we've healed it, but now we've got to get you rehabbed. When I broke my leg in college doing something really stupid, and I had to go, not only do I have a titanium pin and 5 screws in my leg, I had to go to rehab for 4 months or so to get the muscles and stuff all back in motion and had to do a bunch of stretches. So I was picturing something of a story like that in this volume. That doesn't happen at all. In fact, Bruce's back doesn't get healed until the second to last issue, the final part of this storyline from Legends of the Dark Knight, written by Denny O'Neil, called Quarry, Part 3. At the very last page, of second to last page of this story arc is where Chandra heals Bruce's back, right here. And you're going, well, it looks like she's kissing him. What's going on? And is that even Bruce Wayne? It's a whole thing. Bruce is jumping around the world in a wheelchair, and then he's on canes, and then he's disguising himself as an Englishman. Alfred gets mad during all this, and he leaves for no reason at all, which is really random. And so Bruce is impersonating this Englishman, trying to save Chandra Kinsolving, who apparently, as you find out in the second arc of this story after the Justice League Task Force issues, you find out that Chandra Kinsolving is a psychic. And not just psychic, I would read your mind. She has weird mind powers where she can heal people and or things. And then you find out she has a stepbrother from when she was adopted, whom, when they get together, both of them have mind powers. And now he's created a device to kill people with mind powers, basically through her. It's all very wacky, not very Batman, and not very good at all. And the fact that they saved her, healing Bruce's back for the second to last page of this issue, just goes to show that they didn't really care about how Bruce got his back solved. They were just, trying to tell the story for some reason, which easily could have been wrapped up halfway through this 8-issue trade paperback, and they could have gone on another adventure about, rehab or Bruce discovering Jean Paul Valley and all his sins and stuff like that, or, puzzling over whether to be Batman and stuff. Instead, all that stuff that I just said they could have done is shoved into Robin number 7 here in the very last issue. It's all kind of wrapped up in 22 pages. That is the moment where you get Bruce going, I've been Bruce Wayne longer than I've been Batman in months. Should I continue to be Batman? As he's talking to Tim Drake. You also have Tim Drake kind of revealing that Jean Paul Valley killed the villain Abattoir in here as kind of an aside. Then they go down into the Batcave and confront Jean Paul. It's all very rushed, where I felt like that part of the meat is really the meat of what the story should be, and that should have been expanded. And this weird search for Chandra Kinsolving should have been shrunk down substantially. It felt like completely useless waste of time. And now I understand why this has probably never been collected, because until this, now, and because it's not really, it's barely part of the story. The only thing that makes it part of the story is that Bruce Wayne's in it when his back is broken, and there's a phone call between Alfred and Tim that parallels a phone call in, I think, one of the Robin issues in the first in the first volume here, or maybe it's in one of these other issues. Tim gets a call from Alfred in this volume, and they kind of parrot the dialogue in between these two issues. So, you know, very, very strange. Now, when it was coming out, everything in this trade was like spaced apart. You weren't reading it all at once. You got a couple issues of Asbats in Shadow of the Bat, and then you got a 2-part story in here. Legends of the Dark Knight wasn't even involved in the storyline until the Search part came up. I think they were doing like, you know, I mean, they've always kind of done their own Batman stuff in there. And then the Search shows up. So, you know, it wasn't really meant to be read all together. And that's also a detriment when you read it in this, because you're reading everything all at once instead of like, some of these stories probably take place months after each other. Whereas when you read it in here, even though you're on the hunt for Chandra, it's all very like, you know, it's moving at a good clip. It's pretty rapid pace. But it doesn't make the story any better, honestly. And I liked the artwork. I liked Brett Blevins. He was in here. He did a very good job. He does the Shadow of the Bat stuff that you've read here in the Knightquest volumes. You know, sometimes his art's good. Sometimes it's a little rough around the edges. But overall, I like it. We also had Ron Wagner come in and do some pencils in here. Eduardo Barreto did some pencils in here that were fantastic in the back end of this Corey storyline. Very, very good. You have, who did this? Sal Voluto does the first 2 issues, which is the Justice League Task Force storyline, and it's kind of a, he's doing some of this weird double-page spread layout stuff, where, it's barely, this is one panel, but this is barely a panel. So when you're reading it, you're like going down, you're going up here, and you're going, wait a minute, do I go over? Do I go down? It's, if you're going to do this stuff, like, make it big, dude. Anyway. It's harder in a trade, honestly, than when you probably read the single issues, 30 years ago or something, and you had the entire thing spread out in front of you. But, yeah, I understand why this was never collected before, because it's kind of a terrible storyline. And Bruce healing his back is so secondary. Not even secondary. It's like the D storyline. It's not even a thought half the time. And the fact that they just do it magically in one page kind of ruins the impact of Nightfall at all. It ruins the impact of the journey that Gene Paul's been on in these 2 volumes of, slowly kind of going insane and losing it. And, his mind is battling himself between being an avenging angel and assassin that he's programmed to be, and wanting to be a better person, be this Batman, this crusader, and then somehow failing to do both, which kind of leads us to where we're going, which is Knight's End. Now, I have read this, not this particular volume, but I've read Knight's End before in my old collection. The thing I haven't read that's what's in here is the epilogues. There's an issue of Catwoman here. There's an issue of Robin. There's an issue of Showcase, I think it's 94, number 10, where it's like what happens to Gene Paul immediately after the conclusion of part 10 of the Knight's End storyline. So I haven't read all that. So I'm, excited to reread this. And I do remember that Knight's End has a little bit more of the healing, kind of retraining Bruce Wayne. But I expected a whole lot more of that in The Search. So, Knightquest, The Search, totally forgettable, not necessary. The only thing you really do need to read is this Robin number 7 book right here. This is the cover. But I would not, honestly, buy this trade paperback if you have the old Omnis or whatever. Just go on Comixology, read that if it's not in there. I'm sure it's collected. It's called Knightquest, The Conclusion. It's got to be in there. But this is not worth your $20 or whatever you can get it for. It looks nice on the shelf if you've got all 9 volumes. I think is kind of the completionist part, is like you kind of, don't have to have it per se, but you're going to want to, because you're going to see this hole. Because you're going to miss, the bat signal connecting right there on your shelf. What, you're just going to leave it like that? You're just going to, no. You're a comic book reader. You got to complete it. But is it worth it to complete it just for that? It's up to you. I don't think so. But had I known that ahead of time, I still would have gotten it. But, yeah, I think you can totally skip this. Honestly, if you're reading this, or you're reading these trades, read Knightquest Volume 1 and Volume 2. I have my reviews on the channel for both these trade paperbacks. I'm a fan of Azrael, Batman of Azbats. These were great. I really enjoyed reading these again and some of this stuff for the first time. Then get this book if you need to. Read Robin number 7. It's the last 20 pages in here, right there. Read that and then move on with your life and go directly to Night's End and go from there. That'd be my recommendation. So thank you guys for watching this review of Knightquest The Search. Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent Cosina. Today we're going to be talking about Night's End and what I thought of the story, which I've read many, many times. But this is the first time I've read it in this newer trade paperback collection. This is labeled Batman Night's End. This is part of the 25th anniversary edition of Nightfall, which was 2019, 2018, a couple years ago. Was a 25th anniversary. Wow, 25 years. So finally read it. So this includes a couple of things that had never been collected before in the older collections. It included both Aftermath issues with Robin and Catwoman, and also the Showcase 94 number 10, where you just kind of find out a little bit what happens to Jean Paul after Legends of the Dark Knight 63 Part 10 of Night's End. So, what did I think? Well, I love this story. I mean, this is one of my favorite Batman stories because it's Batman versus Batman versus Batman and everything in between. You got Robin in here, you got Nightwing, you got Catwoman. It's like a who's who of the Bat family. And best of all, a lot of this book has my favorite Batman costume. This is my newest acquisition here. The red version, a little bit towards the end, but the blade capes and stuff. And then there's something I was talking about, I think in the Knightquest Part 2 Crusade, the Crusade Part 2, where I was describing how he uses those blades as a shield, and then he does it in the first issue, and I was like, there's the thing. I wish it was a little bit easier to find the last time I had mentioned it. So apparently that's what those are for. They're only ever used twice. One in Detective 675, I think, and yes. And then in this issue right here, this is, what is this? Yeah, Batman 509. So it's the only ever 2 times you really see him use it that way. So this really has Bruce Wayne doing the rehabilitation route that I thought The Search was going to contain. Now remember, when we read that book, The Search had absolutely nothing to do with Bruce healing his back, which is kind of what we'd been told, or I'd been told or read on the internet for the last 25 years or so. And it was in one panel, in one page, and the very end of the last book of that collection. And The Search overall was a pretty bad story. This actually has, like, the first 4 or 5 parts is Bruce training with Lady Shiva, trying to get his physical fitness back and his reflexes and muscle memory, all that stuff, getting it back. And she does it in kind of a cool way where it's not boring or blasé. Like, they skip most of the training where he's training with Shiva and jumps right to, like, the final test, this gauntlet she throws him. And she goes out in this bat mask, this Tengu mask as it's called. And this one right here. And this is also the mask that's on, like, the action figure that came out a couple years ago, or 10 years ago, from DC Direct as part of the Nightfall line. Anyway, she kills somebody in this mask, and then, like, he's a master sensei in martial arts. He's got no arms. He's just legs. And all his students basically come looking for the assassin, which is wearing this mask, and then she gives it to Bruce without him knowing that, hey, there's going to be a lot of people hunting you. So it kind of puts Bruce in a corner, back up against the wall, that he has to defend himself because it's life and death, because these other people think he killed their master, and it's, it's do or die kind of thing. And then she won't release him from any, tell him his training's complete until he actually tries or actually kills someone. And it's something like an ongoing conversation that's, separating Bruce from Jean Paul Valley, who's not really killed people, but let people die on purpose in the last volume of the Crusade with Abattoir. And then the cousin of Abattoir also dying as a result of him not saving Abattoir. Graham Etchison, I believe it was the character's name. But really, they're setting up this dichotomy in this storyline of, this armored Batman lets people die, and then regular Batman doesn't. Regular Batman saves people and chooses not to kill as a rule. And, Shiva's trying to break his one rule, as the Joker would say from The Dark Knight. So it eventually comes down to a head where Bruce appears to kill somebody, and then you have this wonderful half issue with Nightwing and Robin walking in at the exact right moment, almost as if they walked in on Bruce having sex with somebody's mom, and they're just like, "What is this? What are you doing? Oh my gosh, I can't believe, Bruce, you've broken everything." And then Lady Shiva shows up and is reveling in this chaos she's created amongst the Bat family, and it's just a really cool moment. I think it's part 5 of Night's End. Really cool. And then she leaves and says, "Your training is complete. I have broken the Batman. I've made you kill. My job is done here." She leaves, and then the guy immediately starts coughing, and they're like, "Oh, it was a feint." And he's like, "Yeah, I altered the deadly strike she taught me to make it appear like this guy was dead, or at least just passed out for a long, long time. And then everything's good again." But that I still like that part of the story, but I think it really picks up, obviously, at the end, the last 5 parts, where it's Batman versus Batman. And, the first 5 parts, while you see Bruce training and stuff, you see, things are going downhill very fast for Jean-Paul Valley. He's had, in the Knightquest Crusade volumes, you had a couple issues here and there where you'd have a spirit come at him, whether it was the ghost of his father or the ghost of Saint Dumas, and he was just kind of what is going on? Well, they come at him a whole lot more in this issue, so they're really driving the point home that he's lost it. There's complicating factors within him. This brainwashing of the system is kind of combating him being in the Batman mask. So he doesn't know what to do with himself, because he's supposed to be Azrael, but at the same time, he really, really wants to be Batman. So he doesn't know how to take care of himself. So what Jean-Paul Valley's doing in this first half is he's hunting down this guy who he thinks is still alive, Laha. Now, who is Laha? It's not explained in this issue at all. It's just this is the guy that killed my dad, and I'm going to go get this guy. Well, actually, Laha is in this right here, and I'm so glad I reread the Sword of Azrael miniseries. This is the Fallen Angel collection. I think this is a little bit more available than the older trade paperback that just collects the 4-issue Sword of Azrael miniseries. So it's in the Sword of Azrael miniseries here, where you meet Laha, and then they kind of defeat him, and it's kind of left up to that. So if you really, really want to know who Laha is, pick up Sword of Azrael 1 through 4, or the Fallen Angel Volume 1 trade paperback, which is the only volume we're ever going to get, unfortunately. But it's all in here. He is this guy back here. So Jean-Paul Valley is just chasing this mobster named Laha, whom we never see. We think he's dead. It's just all of his associates and stuff have now crawled out of the woodwork to do this arms deal in Gotham. So he's kind of on a blood quest or something. He's really, really driven. He's punching people really hard, saying, "Where's Laha? Where's Laha?" And they're like, "I haven't seen that guy in months, man." And he's like, "I don't believe you," because he's got these voices in his head that are helping drive him insane. And all this collides with Catwoman on a bridge in Gotham, and that's where everything kind of goes to crap. Batman shows up, and they're battling. There's a helicopter involved. It's a really cool couple of issues, that sequence there. And it's here, it's kind of weird, where the fuel from the chopper lands on both Batmen, and then because Jean-Paul Valley has a flamethrower, he ignites it, and he's in his blue costume up until this point, right? He ignites it, falls into the water, shoots his grapple gun, comes back up the top, and then at the end of the issue, he's in the red costume. Now, on the video I did for this guy a couple of weeks ago, so one of the comments was "Yeah, the fire burned off the paint on the armor, and it's all red underneath." And that doesn't make any sense, my man. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Because, number one, well, the costume, this has got, this is paint, so it's action figure. But to show this is a little bit harder for me to do than to show the costume. So just know that they're the same. Number one, in the art, the bat symbol is still black. His yellow armor is still yellow. His pants are still gray. So none of the paint or whatever the heck that caught fire in that part of the costume, changed colors at all. So why the blue paint on the rest of his costume just withered away, and why it's red underneath? Like, most metal is, I don't know, I guess some sort of like a gray color when you cool it and stuff like that. So if you really wanted some like deeper explanation other than the editors and the colorists thought it would be cool to give him another costume evolution in this story, which is probably what the reality is, let's just go with the paint reacted to the intense heat of the fire and then turned the blue paint to red. And we'll just go with that. So just had to point that out. I thought it was so funny. I was like, let me reread Knight's End and keep a keen eye out for that to see if it was ever mentioned. And is it ever mentioned in here at all? None whatsoever. It's just something that happens in the story. And they don't even really acknowledge it. Like, why is he red now? There's no moment like that. And this culminates, you have Nightwing and Azbats going at it in a wonderful issue on a casino boat, or in a casino with Graham Nolan drawing, and then you have the final climactic issue, which is called Climax. And this is in Legends of the Dark Knight number 63. This is the issue I have read and reread the most out of like every Batman issue I've ever owned, simply because I had it. So Legends of the Dark Knight number 63. This is written by Denny O'Neil and art by Barry Kitson. To me, this is like a very special issue because we've had volumes upon volumes with Graham Nolan on art, Mike Manley on art, Alan Grant, Doug Munch, Chuck Dixon on the writing team, and then here you have the Batman writer of all time, pretty much Denny O'Neil. He was the editor of the Bat books at the time. So for him to come in and swing in on the last issue and then bring in Barry Kitson along, who we had seen in some other art in one of the earlier volumes of this paperback set. I want to say it was like, maybe it was one of the Knightquest issues or a fill-in with Catwoman or something like that. But for him to come in and just turn in what he turned in on this issue, which is called Climax, is a this is just like the best. You had Brett Blevins in here doing his kind of weird, sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't thing. You had Graham Nolan doing very, very awesome work in here. You also had Tom Grummett on the Robin issues doing a great job. But this was just like the creme de la creme in terms of art in this book. Here by Barry Kitson, inks by Scott Hanna, and colorist Digital Chameleons. This is the digital colors are in the early 90s here. But there are so many iconic images in this book, in just this one issue for me, that stood out. And it on the thicker paper and like this newer printing, and just, brought back memories of me reading this issue alone in my childhood going, there's two Batmen and they're fighting and this guy killed people? What is going on? And man, his costume is awesome. Like, just, it got me. It got me so good. I loved every single second of it. And just the way that Bruce takes down Azbats is so cool because they've had a big fight for a couple issues, and then it comes down to Bruce really outsmarting Jean-Paul Valley, of course, and using his wits to say, I need to disarm this guy. I need to get him to snap out of whatever he's into, whatever trance he's in. And he does it by making him take off the costume, even though, Jean-Paul Valley doesn't want to do that. He makes him do it without realizing it because the circumstances demand it. And then Bruce just kind of does something to make him take off his helmet. And then when he does, Jean-Paul Valley snaps out of it and realizes that, oh, you're Batman. You've always been Batman. And that moment is just so heartbreaking because, like, for the last, umpteen issues that we've been reading, you've had Jean-Paul Valley saying to himself, I'm Batman, I'm Batman, I'm Batman. And the whole fight on the bridge, he's yelling at Robin, at Nightwing, at Bruce, saying, only one true Batman. He's like beating Batman at moments saying, tell me, there's only one true Batman. Tell me it's me. Tell me it's me. And he's like just so heartbroken at the end that he just kind of, Bruce lets him go and he just walks away. And then you have that, the final issue in this collection, the Showcase 94 number 10, where it's just Jean-Paul Valley just like hanging out under a bridge with some homeless people. Nothing really to say after that. He's just at the lowest of the low points and realizes he's walking away. He realizes he's just a person, and that's a start. That's something new. So I really, really love this Knight's End story. I think it's a great ending to a wonderful saga. And even if you don't like Asbats, I think you can read Nightfall. You can read like the first 3 trades that are in this collection, the Prelude, Nightfall Part 1 and Part 2, or Volume 1, Volume 2, I think they're called on the spines. And then you can jump to Knight's End if you really want to, but I highly encourage you to go read the Knightquest-ish volumes, the Crusade especially, Volume 1, Volume 2. I think you can skip the search, honestly, but I think I said that in my last review video for that one. But coming back here, this just feels like home, and I can't wait to read more, even though I know that I'm not going to enjoy Prodigal because I've never enjoyed Prodigal. So we are almost done with our read-through of these newer trade paperback volumes of the Nightfall collection, basically. We have Prodigal, which is next, which oddly enough takes place right after this book does. And then the last one, Troika, which I've never read. So looking forward to those. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. We're going to be talking about Batman Prodigal today. I just finished reading it last night because I was like, it's a week before Christmas and I can kind of relax now. And then I was like, oh no, I made it a goal to at least finish reading these Nightfall trades before quarantine and do videos on them. So I sat down, I was like 2 parts into this, and I finished the rest of it. Now, it wasn't a slog per se, Prodigal. It's just not, there's nothing to it. There's nothing holding it together or anything like that. It's very much like individual tales of Batman and Robin in their adventures, and there's a little bit of stuff at the very end where it's like, oh yeah, we're this whole idea of this whole trade paperback you're reading, this whole storyline that we have branded on the covers to these books when they came out, we're actually going to do a little bit with it towards the end of it. So it's a whole thing. So anyway, yes, what is Batman Prodigal? Well, as you can tell, there's a couple of Batman on this cover, and if you have the old trade paperback like I did, that is not Bruce Wayne. In fact, yes, there's a Nightwing and a Robin costume in the background on this one. So this is this storyline that happens directly after Knight's End, where, once again, Bruce Wayne gives up the cowl and tells Dick Grayson to put it on. What the hell? It is bizarre. Really, really bizarre. It's not set up at the end of Knight's End, even in that trade paperback, which is the newer printing, the one that I reviewed the last Nightfall video for. So this is like, technically, there's no number on it, but this is volume 8 of 9. The next one would be Troika. And now that I'm reading this version of Prodigal, I am starting to understand maybe why Batman Troika is included in this 9-volume set, this mammoth set. It started with Prelude to Nightfall, then there's Nightfall Volume 1, Volume 2, I'm looking at them up over here if you see me. Then we have Knightquest, The Crusade, Volume 1 and 2. Then Knightquest, The Search, which we talked about, which was kind of like, that was the worst one of the bunch so far. And then we have Knight's End, where Bruce reclaims the mantle from Jean-Paul Valley / Asbats. And then there's this one, Batman Prodigal. And then finally, Batman Troika, which I've never read. I've only read Prodigal once before. It was this version of it. And, yeah, I didn't remember it at all, so it was kind of like a brand new thing. In fact, when I was reading it, I was thinking that there was going to be like a bunch of flashback Two-Face stories in here, and that's not what happened at all. This was all Dick as Batman. Those flashback stories are actually the ones that I hate reading in Nightfall Volume 2, after Bruce gets his back open. There's like a 2-issue interlude with Two-Face. So this book kind of sets up Two-Face as the big bad, but by the time they finally catch up to him, like they're laying a lot of seeds, by the time they finally catch up to him, it's kind of nothing at all. It's just a regular issue of Batman at that point. And it's like, why did you set all this up? It's kind of weird. But to start off with, it is very, very bizarre. Bruce comes back and says, I'm Batman, takes it back from Jean-Paul Valley. The first issue of this, this starts, actually it's different than this old one. If you have the old one, it does not have Robin number 0. And that is actually the beginning of Nightfall, or not Nightfall, of Prodigal. And that's where this cover comes from. You see, this is a created cover. Like, they drew this for the trade paperback when they printed it back in the 90s. Who's on this cover? Can't see. McDaniel? Scott McDaniel? I don't know. That does not look like Scott McDaniel. But anyway, the, let's see if it's on here. Nope. No, okay. Cover illustration by Tom Grummett and Scott McDaniel. This is the Robin artist creating the cover here. And on this cover, they used an interior page from Robin number 0, where the actual moment, like it ends, Robin number 0 ends with Bruce saying, like, "Hey, Dick, I want you to take up the cowl." And then that issue ends, and then immediately it starts with Prodigal Part 1, which is Batman 512. That's this one. The old version starts with this issue. And there's really no setup. Most of Robin number 0 is Dick and Tim Drake, Nightwing and Robin, talking to each other about their experiences as Robin, being Robin. It fits into the whole 0-hour crossover thing that was going on at the time. And then it ends with this, like, shocking revelation. And then Dick picks up the cowl in Batman 512, but they never ask Bruce why. They never ask where he's going. You never find out. Bruce just says, "Oh, well, you know, for the first time in a long time, I was able to live as Bruce Wayne without having this cowl over me, and I really need to spend more time doing that." And I'm like, are you kidding me? The entire thing of the search, which was apparently your entire journey from having your back broken to getting it fixed, you were not spending it living it as Bruce Wayne, living like a regular person, just enjoying life, drinking martinis by the pool and getting your back healed and doing physical therapy. You were out there chasing down some woman who you thought you were in love with, and then eventually her memory disappeared somehow and you let her go. So what were you doing, and why do you think you need to stop being Batman? It is bizarre, and it's never explained at all. Not even a reason given for it. In fact, Bruce comes back at the end, obviously, and says, like, "Okay, I'm ready to become Batman again." And then Dick is like, "I never really thought I wanted to be Batman. Why didn't you pick me the first time?" And he's kind of like, they're kind of having this conversation that you wish they'd had during Knightquest The Search. You would think that, like, as soon as Nightwing finds out there's a new Batman and it's not him, you'd be rushing over there to Bruce Wayne saying, like, "What the fuck, dude? Isn't this the whole reason you trained me? Or am I not the immediate successor to you? How does this not fiddle in your brain?" That conversation happens at the very end of Prodigal, and it's just like, why is this saved for the end? This should be the very first conversation. And they start it a little bit in the first couple issues in here, but then Bruce leaves, and then they stop it until finally Dick's like, he's ready to give up the cowl because he doesn't like being so mean, basically, and because he's trying to be a version of Bruce the way he was Batman. And there's a little bit of like, "Well, I never thought you really wanted me," or etc., etc. It's so short, like they don't even devote an entire issue to it. It's intercut with an issue of Robin where Robin's taken on this new villain whom they thought was Jean-Paul Valley or whatever. And I got another bone to pick with this Jean-Paul Valley bullshit that's in this version of Prodigal. Like, they built him up and then sent him on his way in the Knight's End trade. And there was that little showcase number 10 from Showcase 94 number 10, where he's like living among homeless people. And then there's like 3 pages in here in one of these issues where they actually track him down because they think he's back at it because there's another guy with a big cape and blades and shiny armor and stuff. And then they find him, and you just find out like Jean-Paul Valley's just going crazy in a homeless shelter somewhere. And it's like, man, what a disservice to that character. Just come on. They spent at least a year building all this up. Like, this is crazy. Like, Robin number 1 is in Knightquest Volume 1. And this ends with Robin number 13. So this whole Knightquest to Knight's End saga was at least a year. So Nightfall also, since that's only, those Knightfall trades are only Batman and Detective. They didn't even bring the other books into it until the Knightquest part. That was at least a year as well. Almost. Those things are so fat and so thick when you count the prelude. So there's like 2 years of build up to this thing. And then you're going to go, yeah, he's in a homeless shelter just going crazy. The 90s, man. I guess the 90s. Like, character development, not that important. Having a new villain to fight every issue, that's what's important to our readers. That was what was important in the 90s. And that's basically what Prodigal is. I think you can totally skip it, or you can totally just, pick it up in a shop or your friend's house, read the first issue or two, then skip to the back and read the last issue or two, and you'd be good to go. And you'd be like, I know the story of when Dick put on the Batman cowl for the first time, and walk away from there. Like, you do not need to spend, how much is this? This is a $25 trade. This one was $15 for a difference of 2 issues. The paper quality is different. Paper quality is much different. It's crazy how 2 issues and the paper quality difference will make this like twice as thick. It's crazy. Anyway, yeah, this is not necessary at all. I don't know why they did this. I think they, in the 90s, they had a good thing going. Nightfall was a success. Knightquest was a success. They saw the Night's End numbers start to peak up, and they're like, let's keep this going. Even to the point where they lay seeds in here for this Troika stuff. And now I was reading it, I was like, wait, Troika's mentioned in Prodigal? I don't remember that happening at all. Like, there's a mob hit guy going around saying, like, I work for this organization, Troika, and he's talking to Lucius Fox, and he's saying, we can provide security for you. And then there's this other thing at the end of this Robin issue. I think this is number 11 or 12. Number 12, Prodigal, Part 8. And there's this guy, and they're talking about, we work for Troika, and then it ends with this page of KG Beast. And I'm like, I don't remember KG Beast showing up in Prodigal. This was it, this one page. Do they face him in these other 3 or 4 issues that are after that? No. That has to do with Troika. So this is set up for Troika, which I'm now excited to read. So I'm going, I don't remember that in there at all. Well, get my old paperback out because I haven't gotten rid of it yet. And I'm paging through it. And I find the Phil Jimenez art from, that issue of Robin. And I just lost it because I was talking to you guys. I'm so lucky to talk to you guys for so long. And this issue of Robin deals with, like, Robin getting beat up by some punks. And he doesn't fight them because, he's not dressed as Robin. He's dressed as Tim Drake. So he has to act like an idiot. And I turn this page and there's a big blank spot. And I'm like, what's in the blank spot? And I open up the other trade, the newer one. And sure enough, there's a panel there. And then you turn the page in the new version of the trade. And there's that page I showed you with the mobster threatening another guy. And then the page after that is the KG Beast page I just showed you. So what is this? Well, this is the next issue in the Prodigal Saga, whatever it is. This doesn't even say what version of the comic you're reading, which is why I also like the new trades as well. It tells you, hey, here's the cover, here's the issue number, etc., etc. But yeah, they totally deleted 2 pages and a third out of this Robin issue. So I'm sure if I would go back and look at the other time they talked to Lucius Fox. Actually, no, here it is. Yeah, here's that scene. Here's this guy with the blonde hair talking to Lucius Fox, talking about his organization. That didn't get cut out. But why did they cut out the Robin piece? I have no idea. Here's this weird thing. Ka-chow! This is what Lightning McQueen does. And how do I know that? My son loves cars. Why is he telling Lucius Fox, ka-chow? It's just, it was bizarre anyway. But, yeah, so why did they cut it out? I guess they never planned to collect Troika and then figured it out. I'm glad the editors of the paperback collection here realized that they need to leave that part in, or collect the entire issue by itself, especially since Troika is now the 9th volume of this massive 25th anniversary trade paperback set. Yeah, that's my review of Prodigal. It's fun Batman stories. If you want to read more fun Batman stories from this time period, I think you can totally read it. It's worth picking up. In that case, they're all fun. There's fun bits with Two-Face. There's fun bits with Tallyman, who I really do like, actually. The ventriloquist starts out our story in here, and that's fun. He was like a new villain at the time because Dick's never encountered him before, and they're all like, Arnold Wesker did this or this. And it's like, wow, I didn't realize that ventriloquist was not that old. So I guess he appeared right before Nightfall. There's a Ratcatcher story in here, which I've never really read a Ratcatcher story before. I guess maybe I have when I read the original one, but great stuff in here. Great art. Phil Jimenez is doing the Robin issues here instead of Tom Grummett. So his early stuff is really fun to look at, and it's crazy how detailed he was then, and also to see the improvement from what he does in here to, like, if you pick up Infinite Crisis and read him there, or his Wonder Woman days, huge improvement, even though he's still a solid artist in this volume. So, man, this guy, Phil Jimenez, is like in his 40s. He's worked a long time. Bravo, dude. Good job. Tom Grummett's in here. You got Brett Blevins. You got writers like Alan Grant, Doug Munch. You have Lee Weeks doing an issue or two in here. Graham Nolan. You know, all the great guys that have been doing the Nightfall, Knightquest stuff are in here as well. So if you like those artists and you want to read Batman stories by them, I think Prodigal is a good pickup for that reason. If you really want a story of Dick Grayson putting on the cowl, like I said earlier, read the first couple, read the last couple. You know, better yet, buy them back issues or something like that, or buy them digitally, look up what's in here, figure out. I mean, you can look at the numbers. It says Prodigal Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 on the cover, so that would be pretty easy for you to figure out. Read Part 1, Part 2, read Part 10, Part 11, whatever the last part is, and call it quits, if that's what you want to read, if you want to find out why Dick, you know, put on the costume and took it off. Like I said, it's really bizarre. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And no reason is given, and you don't even find out what Bruce was up to. So maybe we'll get more of that in this Troika trade that I'm now excited to read. I've never read before. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Prodigal. Skippable, but if you just want to enjoy it, I think it's totally readable. So, hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent Cassina, and yes, I have finished my self-promise to finish Batman Nightfall, the 9-issue set, in 2020 over the quarantine. Yes, we're still in it. We're still here. It is New Year's Eve today, which means I'm completing my goal. This will come out tomorrow on New Year's Day, first day of 2021, so Happy New Year to everybody. But I made a promise to myself, and I think I mentioned it on the channel before, that I wanted to finish reading all of these 9 volumes of the new Nightfall trade paperbacks from a couple years ago. These are the 25th anniversary editions. They've all got the Batman logo here up top, and they have there's 9 of them, and they all have a different piece of a bat logo on the spine. So you can look at my first video in the Nightfall playlist I have. It's the trade paperback rundown, and that goes over everything that's in these. So check them out. So this is it. This is volume 9 of that complete set, or the 3rd volume of the Knight's End set, basically. So these 3 spines show the shattered bat logo that's here in the corner, and that starts with Knight's End, then goes to Prodigal, and finally concludes here with Troika. So what is this? Well, this book is kind of an odds and end book to me. Troika is only a 4-part story, and it's kind of just like the first story introducing Bruce Wayne back to Gotham. It's him fighting a couple of Russian mobsters. Troika is a Russian word for like Trinity, you know. So, and they're not even working. The Russian mobsters really don't like to work together. They're kind of just going after one another in the 4 issues, and then it concludes with KG Beast and a nuclear bomb the size of a baseball. So it's a fun little story. It's cool. I think the most notable things about it is that it introduces Kelly Jones. He starts off this trade paperback with the art, doing the art for Batman, and it's much more stylized compared to the other Batman artists that we've seen in this Nightfall set with Tom Grummett, Graham Nolan, Jim Aparo has gone and left, Mike Manley, who are the other ones? I'm forgetting. But anyway, those are much more like more traditional stylistic artists of the 90s, right? Of early 90s DC. And then you have Kelly Jones bringing his super dark stuff in here. So it's very, very different. If you don't like it, that's fine. It's only the first issue, and then he disappears from this collection because Troika was 1 issue across the bat line, I think, at the time. So it is Batman, Detective Comics, Legends of the Dark Knight, and then Batman, Shadow of the Bat, Detective Comics, and then concludes in Robin. It didn't even have Legends of the Dark Knight. What's also cool here is you get Barry Kitson is doing the Shadow of the Bat issue, I believe, and he's drawing Bruce Wayne, Batman, kind of like he just finished up doing the Knight's End conclusion, so that was fun for me because I grew up reading that last issue like I talked about in that video. And then there's a couple other odds and ends in here that kind of finish this trade out, kind of wrap up some storylines. So Alfred left Bruce Wayne during the Search story because he was upset that Bruce was, pushing himself to the limit, and he said, if you're gonna do this, I'm gonna leave. Kind of like in Dark Knight Rises, right? So maybe Dark Knight Rises pulled it from here. So the next issue after the conclusion of the Troika 4-parter is Nightwing, Alfred's Return, which sees Dick go find Alfred in London in England and kind of try and bring him back into the fold. Like any other 90s comic, and just like Prodigal, they're not really talking about the issues at hand. It's just like, hey, why'd you leave? I thought we were buds. Yes, we're buds. Help me. Okay, I'll help you. And then, like, there's an adventure with Alfred's supposed son, which, surprise, isn't his son. And then finally, the kind of bookend to this, this is the cover here, is The Vengeance of Bane 2. This cover is here done by Glenn Fabry, and he's the guy who did all the other Preacher covers as well. And I think he's done some interiors from time to time, but he's mostly, at least that I know of, a cover artist. Most popular here in the 90s. I think he's done some Hellblazer covers as well. But he's a fantastic artist. If you can take a look at this as I'm holding it up. But anyway, he's not doing any interiors, he just does a cover. You got Graham Nolan coming back with Chuck Dixon doing Vengeance of Bane. They're the ones who invented the character and started off with Vengeance of Bane, the first part, which was collected in the Prelude to Nightfall trade paperback over there on my bookshelf. And the bookend for the entire set is this. And in this story, you see Bane in prison. He's like, he's kicking his venom habit. He's bettering himself. He's doing what all prisoners, I guess, do when they go to prison, which is work out with push-ups and pull-ups and stuff. And he's trying to get his mind right. And there's a little bit of a showdown with Batman at the very end, but Bane's going, I am not your enemy, Batman. I am innocent. I was addicted to that drug venom. And, we shouldn't be friends, but we shouldn't be enemies either. And Batman's just kind of like, okay. And that's where it ends. So Bane is left to have further adventures. I don't know if their plan was to do a spin-off book or something, because Venom, the character and the Marvel Comics was big at the time as an anti-hero, so maybe they were trying to position Bane as that. As far as I know, that never materialized. There was some stuff in Gotham Knights. He showed up in the Batman Legacy crossover. He's still a villain. So whether he got back on Venom and stuff like that, it's not really up here in my memory, but I think I want to say he did, but don't take my word for it. I guess Google it yourself. Who knows? So Troika, is it worth a read? Is it worth the buy? If you've already got all the other, the 8 volumes and stuff, and you just want the complete set on your bookshelf, because frankly it's going to look like crap without this little sliver of a bat symbol there, I think you can. And I definitely think it's worth reading just to read the first issue of Troika, where Batman's talking about coming back, even for how shallow it is. But I think the real treat in this volume is the Alfred's Return supersized issue and the Vengeance of Bane 2 issue, which is also supersized. So there were one-shots back in the day, but I think they're double or triple sized. They feel like they're 40 or 60 pages long each, and those were the best things that were I was reading out of this volume. So I definitely would recommend to read those as part of this volume if you're looking up to pick this up. I don't think Troika is not really a great name for this book. I would have called it Return of Batman or something like that. But I guess since Troika was the quote-unquote crossover that brought Bruce back to the Bat line, that's what you want to call the volume, and because that's also what takes up, I guess, maybe most of the pages. Although when you end Troika, you're right here in the book. You're kind of halfway through. So I think they probably could have called it whatever they wanted to, but oh well. The other funny thing is, Batman starts out with this all-black costume that, I don't know who designed it, but it's showcased here on the cover of the Batman. This is Kelly Jones. So, I don't know if he designed it or what, but basically it's like an all-black one-piece jumpsuit with the cowl. and the gloves and boots are all built in. There's no lines or anything. And by the end of Troika, Batman's like, you know what? I'm going back to gloves, and puts gloves on and changes it up a little bit from just all black to, maybe just a little dark gray and black. So it's a minor change, but I just thought it was funny. The end of Prodigal, you have this all black decked out Batman saying things are going to change, and then at the end of the 4 parts, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going back to gloves. I forgot about those. They have a story reason for them in there, but it's not really all that great. I think it's just an aesthetic change because maybe artists complained, hey, you're drawing gloves on there, and they're like, Batman wears gloves, and they're like, no, he doesn't, not anymore, and they're like, why? And then now we have gloves and boots back, so it's fun. It is kind of notable too, if you had been paying attention to the Knightfall storyline, beginning with part 1, I think, volume 1, with Kelly Jones's on-cover duties. He does covers for the entire crossover through Knightquest, most of those, except for the Shadow of the Bat issues, which are done by Brian Stelfreeze, which are fantastic by themselves as well. And those are all painted covers, Shadow of the Bat. If you've ever seen those, they're all fantastic. But Kelly Jones had been doing covers for all the Nightfall trilogy, and then finally comes in to do Batman here in this book, and does the cover to his own issue there. He doesn't do the covers to the other ones, which is kind of strange. But I guess if you're doing a monthly book, you don't have time to do a cover for everybody else. So that is fun. And then there is more Kelly Jones Batman if you want to go read it. There's a volume 1 and volume 2. They're both written by Doug Munch. I have not read either of those, but apparently they're well done. You can also read, what do I have? What's it called? Batman Kings of Fear, which I reviewed and read, I think, earlier last year. And maybe it was earlier this year. And there's also like a Steve Niles, there's a 12-parter called like Gotham at Midnight or something like that. I don't know if that's been collected or not, but Kings of Fear is definitely out. I have it as a hardcover. There was a trade paperback that was released recently, so if you're a big Kelly Jones fan, you can definitely pick those up there as well. So that's it for Knightfall. I think it was fun. I think it was a great event, reading all of it in 1 year. Definitely, it's a lot to read. Space it out. I definitely didn't read, them all back to back. As you can see, it took me, a long time to do these 9 reviews. Not even 9. I think we did Knightfall Part 1 and the Prelude. That was 1. So maybe we did 6 or 7 of these. But I definitely think every Batman fan should read it. And I do like the way that it's collected here. The trades are definitely an affordable way to do it, because I don't think the omnibuses are going to be in print for very long, if they are still in print. But the trade paperbacks are definitely an easy, digestible way to read a little chunk at a time and kind of, put things in, perspective. And the nice thing, too, is it's the original size, so you feel like you're reading the original issues. Now, I know there are people that are all about that oversized artwork, but honestly, this will do you just fine if you just want to read the story. They're also on digital, so if these ever go out of print and you really just got a hankering to read it, you can go pick them up on Comixology. Just look for this banner at the top of each volume, because Comixology also does have the old 3 trade paperback omnibuses, I guess you would type. Maybe you want to call them a compendium. DC doesn't differentiate between them. They'll all say Knightfall Volume 1 or 2, but you got to know this difference between the covers of the sets, because the covers with the banner up top is the newer one that you want to read, that has the most complete issues in it. So definitely check it out. I think it was fun. I think it kind of falls off at the end as they kind of veer away from it being, Bruce's story. I think it's definitely maybe more of an Azrael story by the end of it. It's kind of half and half, but, Bruce is out of commission at the end of Volume 1, so let's call it a Jean Paul Valley Azrael story. I really think it's more about him than his Batman. Because the Knightfall stuff, Volume 2, Knightquest, all those things, Knight's End, you're reading more about Azrael's descent into madness than you are really like, what happened to Bruce Wayne? How did he get his back fixed? That's what the writers are more interested on, because he has the title of Batman, and Batman sells books, I guess. But I think it was fun. I definitely had a lot of fun reading it. Azrael is one of my favorite characters, my favorite costume, my introduction to comics, so I had a lot of nostalgia reading it. But it was fun to read everything, all in order, all for the first time. And definitely that prelude to Knightfall is an essential volume. I know it says prelude, But that is where Batman starts to get so tired, and that's where you meet him in Knightfall Volume 1, is just exhausted, and you can see why he's so exhausted in that Prelude volume. I talk about that a lot in the Knightfall video that I did. I think I did all of them. I know I did Prelude and Volume 1 in one video, so that's why there's not like a Prelude review and then a Volume 1 review, but they're kind of together. But anyway, Troika, I think it's passable, but I do think the Alfred's Return and the Vengeance of Bane one-shot at the end of this book are worth reading, so, you know, maybe it's not passable. I leave it up to you to decide. So thank you guys for watching. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Let me know down below what you thought of Knightfall. If you've read Troika, am I wrong? Is it one of the better Batman stories? I don't think it is. I don't think you can persuade me of that. But I think Vengeance of Bane and Alfred's Return are two good chunks for character development in terms of Alfred and Bane that are worth reading. So let me know what you guys thought down below, and we will see you guys next time here in the Funny Pages.